All right, let's talk about a mystery that's over 500 years old. For centuries, we've had this story about two young princes vanishing from the Tower of London, and the blame has always fallen on their ambitious uncle, Richard III. But what if the story we've all been told is just flat out wrong? What if the real clues aren't crowns and daggers, but, well, ledgers and receipts? Today, we're going to dive into a pretty radical new theory that completely reframes one of history's greatest mysteries. So, that's the big question, right? Was this some classic royal tragedy, a power grab fueled by ambition and all that Shakespearean drama? Or was it something way more modern, something that feels less like a play and more like a cold, calculated corporate hit, all about protecting the bottom line? Okay, so to even begin to wrap our heads around this, we've got to shift our focus. Forget the royal court for a minute. We're heading into the counting houses of 15th century London. We're not following a king here. Nope, we're following the money. And that trail, it leads us straight to one very powerful merchant family, the Gardiner Syndicate. And look, this wasn't just some family business. This was a well-oiled machine. You've got Richard Gardiner, he's the financier. Think of him as the CEO, the wool tycoon, the mastermind behind it all. Then there's his nephew, William. He's the enforcer, a skinner by trade, but he's the guy who supplied weapons and, got things done. And then you've got the cleaners, Thomas and Stephen, whose job was to launder all the profits through the church. I mean, this was a seriously sophisticated operation. So you might be asking, how on earth do we connect all these dots? Well, it comes down to something almost unbelievably simple: a unicorn watermark. Seriously. Think of it as their corporate logo. It's the signature that keeps popping up on suppressed payments, on secret deals, even on quashed indictments and archives all across Europe. It's the thread that ties this whole conspiracy together. Okay, so why? Why would this powerful merchant syndicate want two little boys dead? It seems crazy. But according to this paper trail, the motive had nothing to do with loyalty or treason. It was all business, purely financial. This was a move to protect their entire empire from an absolutely catastrophic loss. And here is the number at the very heart of this entire thing: £15,000. Now, today, that might not sound like a lot, but back in the 1480s, that was an absolutely astronomical sum of money. A fortune. A fortune, by the way, built on tax evasion and smuggling. So to this syndicate, £15,000, that wasn't just a number. It was an existential threat. So here's why that number was so terrifying for them. The legitimate government, under the young King Edward V, was about to launch a massive audit. And an audit like that, it would have exposed everything. The syndicate's entire black market operation, thousands of lost wool sacks, all these complex schemes to dodge duties, the whole shebang. So you see, the two princes, Edward and his brother Richard, they weren't just heirs to a throne. No, to the Gardiner Syndicate, they were a walking, talking £15,000 liability. Okay, so a powerful motive is one thing. That's great. But is there any actual proof of a conspiracy? Well, this is where the paper trail gets really, really dark. It leads us to what looks, for all the world, like a black budget for an assassination, hidden right there in plain sight. Just take a look at this. This is a suppressed entry. A handwritten note, scribbled in the margins of a Westminster Abbey account book. And what does it say? It records a payment of over £340, paid by the hand of R. Gardiner, our financier, and it's specifically for expenses concerning the boys in the tower. It's basically a receipt for murder. And get this, the evidence isn't just in England. We've got international corroboration. If you go over to Italy, a coded entry in a Medici bank ledger, yes, that Medici, credits a huge sum of money to the Gardiners. And the memo line? It is just chilling. For the two little princes, already resolved. The matter was settled. The account balanced. So the syndicate didn't just have the motive and the money. They also had the means. Remember William Gardiner, the enforcer? Well, he owned a weapons workshop called the Red Poleaxe. And records show that on July 13th, 1483, right around the time the princes just vanished, 2 poleaxes from his shop were issued for use inside the tower. And the kicker? Only one of them was ever returned. Getting rid of the princes, that was just step one. That was just clearing a liability off the books. The next step was a full-blown hostile takeover. the syndicate had to remove the king who was threatening that audit in the first place, Richard III, and install a brand new CEO on the throne of England. And when you lay it all out like this, the plan is just methodical. It's chilling. July 1483, the princes disappear. By 1484, the syndicate is funneling all those illegal wool profits to fund an invasion army, one led by Henry Tudor. And then, August 1485, the Battle of Bosworth. William Gardiner himself, the enforcer, allegedly kills King Richard with a poleaxe. And for that service, well, he gets a pretty extraordinary reward. So, what was the final payout for a job well done? William Gardiner, a commoner, a skinner from London, is knighted. Right there, on the battlefield. I mean, this was completely unprecedented. It shattered centuries of tradition. This wasn't some act of chivalry. This was the final bonus payment, cementing the syndicate's power in the brand new Tudor regime they had just put in charge. Okay, so you've executed a coup. You've gotten rid of 2 princes and a king. What's next? The cover-up, of course. A systematic, deliberate effort to erase every single trace of your involvement from the history books. And man, were they masters of deception. First off, they created what researchers call orthographic noise. They used over 50 different spellings of their name. Gardiner, Cardiner, Gardiner. It made them a moving target, almost impossible to track across different archives. Then, get this, when an actual indictment for the prince's murder was drawn up, with their names on it, they just had the new king they installed quash it with a royal warrant. Gone. They even got official pardons that literally reframed killing a king as good service. And to top it all off, they laundered the dirty money through the church, which, surprise, surprise, was run by their own family members. So in the end, what we're left with are 2 totally different stories. On one side, you've got the official Tudor history book version. Richard III was a monstrous tyrant, and Henry Tudor was the heroic savior. But on the other side, you've got the story told by the syndicate's own receipts. A story about a threatened audit, a corporate-funded coup, and 2 little boys who weren't a political threat at all, but a financial liability that was brutally resolved. You know, we're always told that history is written by the victors. It's a classic saying. But this evidence, it suggests something else, doesn't it? What if the real story isn't in the Grand Royal Chronicles at all? What if it's been waiting there all this time, waiting to be discovered, to be audited in the cold, hard numbers of an accountant's ledger? It really makes you wonder. What else is hiding in the margins?